Hello everybody and welcome to episode 13 of an Irish knitting podcast. I am Sam. I'm an artist, illustrator, aspiring knitting designer based in the Republic of Ireland, and you can find me all around the internet looking for Irish farm art. On Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course on Ravelry, in which I try to sell my original patterns as well. If you are a new viewer, thank you so much for deciding and spending an hour with me. This is my knitting podcast, crafty podcast, in which I try to follow the classic knitting podcast schedule, talking about finished works, works in progress, acquisitions, and anything really crafty that is going on in my life. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. This really means a lot to me. So, let's get started. Last week was Easter, so I really hope you all, if you celebrate Easter, have enjoyed holidays and have enjoyed Easter. I was at home visiting my family for the Easter celebrations, of course, and it was quite special. I was back home in the mountains in the northern part of Italy, and it was absolutely beautiful. Spring has come there and everything was fully blossoming, and I really enjoyed. I'm gonna put a little video at the very end of this podcast if you want to check out my endeavors out there. Anyway, let's talk about knitting. What am I wearing? You've probably seen this on my Instagram account, and for sure in my previous vlog as it was drying. This is the Kista tank top or waistcoat, gilet, call it as you wish. It is a bottom-up tank top waistcoat. It's knitted in pieces back and forth. You start from the back side of the waistcoat and you knit all the way up, and then the front you pick up for the neckband and little ribbing around the shoulders, and then that's it. The last piece to do is to add a little bit of contrasting details with a backstitch embroidery. I have no idea if you see the pattern with the camera, and sorry for the sun, but it's absolutely gorgeous and it fits very well. This is a pattern that comes from this issue of the Dritto e Rovescio magazine. It's issue 71, and the pattern calls for a very large gauge of about 11 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, knitted with something like a 6mm needle with bulky yarns. So the original work is a very bulky, very short cropped type of a waistcoat. I did really like the design, but I can't bring myself to knit with such large needles or such a large gauge. I know that I won't use the garment at all. And many of you have asked me what type of modification I've made on the pattern and use a finer yarn and finer needles and get this result basically. And I was really looking through the notes of my pattern, and the only thing that I've done really is tripling, multiplying by 3 every single number in the pattern. So I basically took the larger size, I multiplied by 3 the cast on, and then when the pattern tells you to increase or decrease, I always multiply by 3 every single number, and this was the result. It's not 100% perfect, and I had to tailor, in brackets, a little bit the shape of the garment when it was finished, as for example on the sides here on the hips and the waist it was a little large, but being knitted in pieces was really easy to tailor it as for my liking. And as well, the color work on the lower part of the body was meant to be a little bit higher, and probably my calculation weren't right and it got a little bit on the lower side, but I don't really mind as the V-neck shape here is quite low as well, so it sits very well on the bottom part of my chest, which is really good, doesn't touch the belly, which we don't want to highlight, of course. It was a really easy process and really exciting as well to be able to modify the pattern just that tiny little bit in order to get a garment. I'm not really used to knit in pieces, and I don't really enjoy color work on the wrong side. Purling stranded color work is a nightmare. But eventually we got there. It was quite easy, as I said, and really speedy as well. The yarn that I used is a combination of this type of super soft wool from Holst and JC Rennie, and yeah, that's it, I suppose. I use, of course, as the main color, this gray here is called flannel, and then a light blue from Woolinit, which is called Summerstorm. And the combination of the two is absolutely amazing. It's kind of a subtle type of contrast, which is something that I'm really liking more and more, and we'll talk about that a little later. For the accent color with the back stitching over here, I use this green moss color wool from Holst Garn as well. I held every yarn double so that it got me a thickness of about a DK yarn. These cones of super soft wool are allegedly fingering weight yarns, but the consistency of the yarn may vary a little bit, hence the kind of rustic look of the fabric. You know, you get thinner strands of yarn, you get a little bit thicker strands of yarn, and so on and so forth. So, holding the yarn double, I could actually get a nice-ish, even type of fabric, which is something that I wanted. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this very, very much. On a mention, I must mention that the yarn is really rough and quite difficult to knit, especially the Holst Garn. The Woolinit's cone is super easy, it's very soft and lofty already, and it has less spinning oil on the cone rather than the Holst Garn, which got me a little bit in trouble when it comes to color work. But I found a couple of techniques that may help, and I am gonna touch base a little later on a work in progress. Another mention is the book from which I got the pattern. This is Dritto e Rovescio magazine from Adriafil. And you know, I do love Adriafil for my sock knitting. I think Adriafil has one of the best sock yarn. It's an Italian brand from Adria, I suppose, which is a town in the north part of Italy. So it's kind of a choice of tradition for me, probably, and I want to support an Italian brand as well, especially that comes from my region. So, and it happens that Adriafil has a stunning yarn, so why not? I was looking for books online on knitting patterns and inspiration for my original design, and I stumbled across the Dritto Rovescio a couple of months ago. I didn't know about this before. This came from an Irish shop. I don't remember what's the name, but I will put the link of the shop below in the description for sure. And I only got this and several others magazines because they were super heavily discounted. I think this magazine was about €2 and the retail price is 8 bob. So it was a big bargain. I got a few issues, and as it came out, it's an amazing collection of patterns. The pictures are beautiful, the patterns are super simple and very, very well explained. And of course, it's a great addition to my little library of knitting. The thing that I like is that, of course, the patterns are both fitted for male type of bodies and female type of bodies, which is great. This kista waistcoat was originally designed for a woman, but it was extraordinarily easy to fit on a male body. So I am now on the lookout for other issues of this magazine because it's very cheap, gets you a lot of patterns, and is super beautiful and really modern as well. The only thing that I don't quite grasp or like is that every single pattern is written in pieces. Every garment, it's knitted in pieces like this one, the front part, the back part, and eventually the sleeves or the neckband or whatever. That is something that I find quite common in Italian magazines. I was able to get a hold of old magazine from my mother with a lot of knitting patterns, and all of them are knitted in pieces. And I was quite surprised that Adria Phil, in this very modern new edition, actually keeps the kind of tradition or the way, the mode of knitting garments in pieces. I like it because if this wasn't knitted in pieces, I couldn't probably fit it as I wished, but at the same time it's kind of a pain. I much prefer to knit in the round. So, a suggestion for Audiophile, if they, and I doubt they are listening, but if they are watching this video, try to include some design of a garment knitted in the round. That will be super helpful. But yeah, I warmly recommend this magazine, if for nothing else, is because it's super cheap and is full of absolutely beautiful patterns. Anyway, this was my first finished work, the kista sweater, the kista waistcoat, and I am absolutely in love with it. I will definitely make a new one again and again, and probably again. Next time though, I might think of using a different type of yarn, but I am trying to get rid of some of my cones because I have so many, and it seems like I keep knitting and creating stuff from them, but they are not even. But I can't even make a dent on them. If you see this cone of flannel grey, it was like an 800 grams type of cone, and I think I knitted 2 jumpers, this waistcoat, and probably something else, and I still have a fair amount, and I'm actually knitting another jumper with this. So, I mean, it's a good balance between quality, price, and availability of yarn. But if you are mad like me and you keep buying cones, you end up with a huge amount of cones and a huge amount of wool. So yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of a little bit of my stash, not buying more. But the quality of this yarn, being drenched in oil, it's quite different from any other yarns that I tried. It's not really bouncy and it's not really stretchy. It's quite stiff as a yarn. Although it's super soft, it's lamb's wool, and I can't really complain about the wool. I'm wearing this with a t-shirt, and I really could wear the tank top on my skin. So sorry, someone just called on my phone and I had to stop. And I don't remember where we were, so this episode is gonna be all over the place. Yeah, I was saying that I'm trying to get rid of some of my cones. It's a great yarn, it's not really bouncy, so the next iteration of this jumper I will probably make it with a more bouncy yarn type of thing. Anyway, let's get through the next finished work, which is handily, I don't even know if it's a word. Apologies for my English. I've been spending the last week in Italy and I lost completely any English grammar in my brain. Anyway, this is my second finished work. This is, of course, an original design. It's a pair of socks, and as you can see, there's the other brother here. These are part of my collection related to or inspired by the buildings that are facing the Grand Canal in Venice. The Grand Canal is the main waterway in the city and is always being part of the culture of the city. All the important families used to build their homes, their palaces facing the Grand Canal just for a little bit of show, to show their wealth, their power, etc. So we have now a huge amount of very beautiful buildings facing this magnificent waterway. These socks here are, though, not dedicated to a family's building or a palace, but a basilica, a church. This is dedicated to probably the only church that is facing the Grand Canal of Venice. It's dedicated to the Salute church, which is a big basilica that has been dedicated to the Virgin of the Salute or the Health. In the 1600, don't quote me on the dates today, my brain is still a little foggy, but in the 1600, around that era, Venice was battered by a giant, long epidemic of plague. The bubonic plague was basically destroying the city. The social fabric of the city was completely gone, and the government was really, really weak at that point. So the people of Venice, the government decided to make a vow to the Virgin Mary and ask the Virgin Mary to save the Republic from the destruction of the plague. And so they built this magnificent church in the front of the Grand Canal, which is absolutely beautiful. It's built in a sort of a neoclassic type of design with extraordinarily decorated structures. The facade is so beautiful. Inside is quite simple, and it wants really to make people remember that very dark moment of the city devastated by the plague. It was a vow to the Virgin Mary and as well a link of the people of Venice with the Virgin Mary to thank her for eventually saving the city from the plague. And from that moment, every year, on the day of the Madonna della Salute, or the day of the Virgin Mary of Health, the city, the people of Venice, built a bridge between St. Mark's Square and the Basilica della Salute made out of boats. And for just a week, for the celebration of the remembrance of Venice being saved by the plague, people can walk through this temporary bridge made out of boats, one beside the other, and it's quite beautiful. And it's a very big, strong tradition in Venice that still goes on after God knows how many years. So this socks wants to pay a homage or try to be inspired by that building, especially on the color work on the cuff and the pattern on the heel. The cuff has this little circles type of thing that kind of reminds all the many windows on the top of the dome of the basilica. I decided to use a bright yellow because this church is very close to another kind of focal point of Venice. It's very close to the Dogana, which is basically the former border the stop check of the Republic of Venice to get boats into the city, to get merchandise into the city, to get commerce into the city. The Dogana is like a little spot in the Grand Canal, on the very, very beginning of the canal, in which the boats used to stop there, fill in the custom forms, and eventually being put in quarantine or go on and pass through the city, enter the canal, and go about their business. What is interesting in the Dogana is that there is a giant golden yellow bowl that symbolizes the Venice has power all over the world, or what was the world back then, and the fact that Venice has links with the globe of the world, and everybody were welcome in the city. So this massive bowl, golden bowl, is actually kind of the symbol of that quarter, that region. And the first thing that you see when you come into Venice by boat, or they used to, is this massive globe. And kind of the yellow wants to remind that. Nowadays, of course, Venice is not a republic anymore, and the Dogana is no longer needed, the custom house is no longer needed as well, and the boats don't come for commerce reason in the city, but they go outside the city to the modern pier and the port. And that is just a reminder of the former glory of the republic. Let's talk about the sock. I don't want to bother you with history things, and I know that I could talk for hours and hours about this type of things. But the sock is knitted from the cuff and down, top down, I suppose. We have a 1x1 ribbing that starts with an Italian cast on, which is currently my favorite cast on. I do that all the time for every type of knitting. And then we have a tiny bit of color work. This is just a stranded color work. I didn't want to get this sock really busy with color work. First of all, because it's dedicated to the Basilica of the Salute, which is really, really white, to be honest, doesn't have many colors in it. It's really heavily ornated. There's no colors, it's just a big block of white marble, I suppose. And going down we have a game of pearl and knits to give a little bit of a stretch. I wanted this sock to be really wearable, quite easy to knit, but give some sort of a flair where it's needed actually. I've noticed that all my socks are quite bulky, if you wish. There's a lot of color work, there's a lot of texture, and they may feel a little tight if you wear them in your shoes. So I really wanted something I could slip on my shoes and wear them as an everyday sock. And I think this is quite doing the game well. The next thing that I want to mention is the heel. I don't know if you can see this, but I for sure will put some images. I don't know even if my camera is in focus, to be honest. Anyway, this is a kind of a honeycomb pattern made out of raised stitches. New technique to me, but I really like it because although it's really simple to make, it gives the heel a nice texture, a little bit of a visual appeal as well, and of course some sturdiness, because the raised stitches implies that there is a loop behind them that gives a second layer of fabric, so this won't really wear down at all. The next thing will be the gusset, which is made out of pearl stitches. I was looking for this type of gusset for so long. I've seen so many knitters doing this gusset, but I couldn't really figure out in my mind how this could work. And yeah, it was just a very, very happy accident that I decided to purl instead of knit the gusset. Does it make sense? Anyway, it's super beautiful. It's a German short roll heel flap and gusset, so nothing really crazy. And the toe is just my usual round toe with some decreases on both sides. The yarn that I used is a combination of Adriafil Calza sock for the yellow, and this gorgeous grey is from Regia, which is becoming surely one of my favorite sock yarn. I find that Adriafil is very nice and lofting, very, very soft. Regia is a little bit rougher and a little bit rustic, but just that little bit there actually makes me enjoy. The fabric that it creates, it's super, super beautiful. The flip side is that they're quite on the pricey side, so if I have to spend €10 for a 50-gram ball of yarn to make a pair of socks, you know, it's not crazy, but it's not the cheapest yarn. Anyway, here we go. These are my Salute socks, and you can find the pattern on my Ravelry shop. Look for Irish from Art, or the link below in the description, of course. And I suppose we are done with finished works, and we should slide through the works in progress. I don't have many, but I have a couple that are quite interesting. So the first one that I want to show you is Handley. Once again, Handley, I don't think it's a word in English, but it's here. It's a sleeve, and we do have another sleeve as well. This is a pattern that comes from this Sandnes Garn 2015 Mr. magazine, and it's called Pele Sweater. If I find the picture, I'll show you. Here it is. It's a beautiful, beautiful sweater. I might actually pop an actual picture because I don't know if the camera is picking up anything. It's a beautiful sweater. It's a raglan construction from the top and up, and it's a full-on color work, as you can see from this sleeve. This is a crazy amount of work to do. I have decided to knit the smaller side, the first size, and I am using a combination of cones once again because I want to use a little bit of these cones, and as well because I've knitted before Sandnes Garn's patterns using super soft wool, and they are among the jumpers that I wear the most, so it's a great combination, and I exactly know how many stitches I need using this and my needle size of choice, which we'll go to that in a second. So I use a combination of this. I use the flannel grey, this Summer Storm, and the Prussian blue. Prussian blue and the flannel grey are from Host Garn, while the Summer Storm is from Woolly Knits. So the first thing that we have to talk about is the fact that it's full-on color work. Full-on color work means that you need to knit color work all the way through the body and the sleeves, everywhere basically, and easy enough, you may say. I've done color work before and was okay. The point is that this is a three-color color works all the way through, so you always have three colors around your fingers. I am a continental knitter, so I knit with the yarn on the top of my finger, even if I'm doing color work. And I found a couple of things that were really frustrating and really difficult for me, probably due to my inexperience and probably due to the yarn. The first thing was to be able to twist the stitches. There are a few rows in which you have very long floats, more than 5 stitches. And I like to twist my floats, to twist my stitches every 5 stitches. which was extraordinarily complicated, and I had to stop and twist the yarn on the back and start again. And being a continental knitter, if you are a continental knitter, you know that is absolutely frustrating to having a stop and reposition your yarn and all the thing that is going on there. So this probably exists already and someone have done tons of video on that, but I slowly figure out the way to carry your floats and twist the stitches without having to stop your work. And I filmed a little tutorial. I'm gonna put some links below as well of this tutorial, which is something that completely changed my life and the way I do color work, especially for this jumper. The way you do is basically go with your needle underneath both the yarn and pick up the yarn from the back rather than from the top as you would need. I know, doesn't make sense. Go check the video, that makes more sense for sure. The second thing is that this yarn is really tough. It's really rough on the fingers, it's drenched in oil, and the fibers tend to stick together very easily, which is great for color work purposes and as well for sticking. If you do sticking, gives more texture, gives more definition. It's a great quality, but knitting color work with 3 colors, it's a nightmare. So I was looking for ways to get the yarn a little softer or speed up my work, not getting all the ends tangled together, all the yarns tangled together. I couldn't really find anything, so I ended up washing it. I am taking about 100 meters at each time. I wash it in a very mild bath for a couple of minutes only, so I don't really want to get all the spinning oil out, but just enough that allows me to knit more comfortably, or the yarn not to stick together so much as it would if it was just raw, let's say, yarn. This helps a lot. This creates a loftier yarn. When the spinning oil gets off the fibers, the yarn really blooms a bit. I don't want to get rid of all the spinning oils because I would like the yarn to bloom completely and fabric to stick together completely once the actual piece is knitted up. So I found this technique is quite helpful, speeds up immensely the work, the yarn doesn't stick together, and it's really probably the way to go if you're working with 3 colors. I wouldn't be bothered if I had 2 colors and I could just knit on and that was it. But yeah, so soak the yarn for a few minutes with a tiny little bit of shampoo or wool soak, and this smells super shippy. Actually, it's very potent, and that's basically it. Just speeds up your work so much more. I have said that I want the yarn to bloom completely afterwards, so I have a couple of examples here. This is a sleeve that has been blocked, has been washed completely and blocked, and you can see how beautiful the yarn has bloomed, how beautifully the yarn has bloomed, and how even the fabric is. And this is the other sleeve that has just been knitted and not blocked, and you can notice how the yarn is not completely bloomed, and yeah, the fabric is not as even. And as well, of course, the length is a little bit different as well. I am probably going to put some footage on the two side by side just for comparison, because yeah, and it still smells super shippy, which is great actually. Anyway, this is the Pele Sweater. It's a raglan, as we said. It's knitted from the bottom up, and I use the smaller size. I'm following the smaller size, which is around 240 stitches on the waist. I'm using a combination of 2.5 and 3mm needles, which is my to-go kind of sizing for needles and yarns, especially if I use this boy here. And yeah, it's great. I can't wait to get started with the body. I just need a tiny little bit of ribbing, but I've done that while I was away in Italy, and I finished the grey color, so I didn't have any left, and I had to stop. I am probably going to keep knitting on this week, and hopefully having it done by the next podcast. That would be a dream. It's getting brighter here and warmer, so I don't know if this garment is going to be something that I can wear for the summer, but if not, for sure in autumn. The fabric that it creates is not as thin as expected, because there are like literally 3 layers of fabric all together. 3 strands of colors brings a lot of bulkiness in the fabric, so it's a nice warm jumper for winter or for autumn. Anyway, once again, the Pele Sweater from 2015 Sunness Garn Men. And yeah, I have been looking for this book for so long, and I finally got it in eBay type of auction thing. I think I'm gonna need all of the patterns in this book. It's by far my most favorite collection of patterns. I am looking for other Sunness collections, Sunness booklets. They are impossible to find, especially in English and especially in this country. So if you have any idea, or if you happen to want to sell one of these to me, please let me know, put a comment below or contact me. I'd be really happy to get my hands on another collection of Sunness patterns. Going on with works in progress, I have another sock pattern that I just started last week while I was at home, my parents. This is another little sock and is full of hands, because I am trying to knit it from the top down, from the cuff towards the toe, and I did my afterthought heel placing, which will be the way to actually get kind of a lifesaver type of way to knit an afterthought heel. I don't like cutting yarns, so this way I will just unravel the pink strand of yarn, and that will be it. Start knitting the afterthought heel from there. I am doing this because I don't have much of the grey yarn left. It's the Regia yarn that I showed you for the other pair of socks before, and I really wanted to use this yarn in another pair of socks, but I don't know if I can get a full-on color work and as well contrasting toes and heels on the same bow. I'm using a combination of that Regia dark grey yarn and Holst Garn Moss Grain, which gives this very subtle type of contrast on the color work. This is another pattern that is inspired by one of the buildings of the Grand Canal. I will get you more information when the actual sock is knitted. But for now, if you want to test knit this pattern, let me know. I'll be really delighted to send you the pattern. I got it back from my tech editor last week, right before Easter, and I am slowly trying to knit it. It's kind of interesting to use this super soft wool, lamb's wool, in a sock pattern, and I've never done this before. It creates a very kind of thick thick is not probably the right word, dense type of fabric, which is great for sock. And being a combination of color work and mosaic knitting, although it's very dense, it's extraordinarily stretchy. I tried this tube on and it goes really well up my heel and my, how you call it, my calf. So yeah, it's just a very simple repetition of the color work, but it really works very effectively. If you're interested, drop me a line, I'll send you the pattern. I would be really happy to have a couple of test knitters at least for this. There's nothing metaphysical on the pattern, it's just one of my sock recipe, but I think the color work is really bringing something together to this sock, and I'm really happy about that. So as you can see, I'm trying to knit a lot from cones. Again, I have so many that I really need to get rid of them. It's a quite enjoyable process, although cones are rough. It takes a long time to knit up, and you never know what you're gonna get because the wool behaves in a way that no other wools would. I like it. It's not the most enjoyable way of knitting, but it's definitely something that makes you learn a lot. That was it for my works in progress. I suppose this is gonna be such a short episode. But yeah, as you know, I am still knitting on a set of Christmas decorations that I don't think I have here. I basically came up with some Christmas balls, based roughly on the idea of Arne and Carlos Christmas balls, which I am knitting, and I am trying to knit all of them. But the design and the structure and the way they are constructed is actually completely different. I really wanted to make something new and that is more easy to make, and that is I don't know, something different just. And I am looking for a way to include them in a kind of advent calendar type of collection. I think I'm going to print the pattern down and put them in nice little envelopes. I have no idea. But yeah, those are something that I am working on. And as well, I'm working on another, my second actually, not another, my second garment design, which will be again a raglan sweater with a nice color work, probably on the yoke. I still have no idea. Something is coming up though, and some ideas are coming together. I might actually, in the future, probably, if you're interested, and let me know if you are, start showing you the way I design my patterns and thinking process behind the design and all the steps that I take to design. I don't know personally any other knitting designer, so it's a process that I actually came up by myself, and it seems to work a little bit. I am not by any means a successful designer, but it's something that I really enjoy, and if you're interested, I would love to share a little bit of this with you. Just let me know. So that was basically it for my works in progress projects that I will have is of course going on with the Pele Sweater from Sadness Garn, my socket design, my jumper design, and knitting a couple of more Christmas decoration, which is a huge amount of projects, and I don't want to think about that, otherwise it gives me anxiety. Let's talk about acquisition now. I don't have many acquisition. I was away, I couldn't bring myself to buy yarn from away, but I always had my phone checking yarns and ideas that come up. But yeah, you know. So, two things that I received right before leaving is this book here, first of all, which everybody and their dogs have, and everybody knows, is the 52 Weeks of Socks by Line Magazine. It's a great collection of socks. I got this on Amazon, unfortunately. It was a second-hand book and cost me a quarter of the price of the book. Tends to be quite expensive, I've heard. It's absolutely stunning. I don't tend to knit other people's socks design this because I don't have time. Knitting my own design and coming up with designs gives me very, very small amount of time to knit socks, but I do enjoy really having ideas and gathering ideas from other designers, thought processes behind sock knitting from other designers, and here and there knitting some interesting socks from other people. Although I always don't really like to get to be like copycatting the ideas from other people. If I see an interesting heel, for example, I always tend to do something different to make it my own, just because I feel like, first of all, it's not fair from to the other creator, and then secondly, I think I would like to bring some added value to my socks or something that hasn't been seen before. Anyway, this book is absolutely stunning. It's full of gorgeous pictures and amazing patterns. If you are a sock knitter, I suppose this is a must. And everybody have this book already. I was so lucky to find it secondhand, which is great. And it's gonna be a great addition to my knitting library, which is growing quite a bit, to be honest. The second book that I got is, of course, this one. I've spoken about this before, is Knitting Gusset by Beth Brown Reinsel. I hope it's the right pronunciation of her surname. What is this? This is a collection of patterns and as well ideas, stitch charts to knit gunsets. I don't really know much about Gusset sweaters, but if I'm right, they are a sort of a style, a tradition in Scotland and in some part of the Faroe Islands and Northern Ireland as well, of knitting fisherman sweaters, sweaters that are used for work on the sea. And the way they are constructed has always kind of fascinated me. They are super, super simple, but they are super beautiful and super effective. So I really wanted to get my hands on this book and try and probably knit one. Seems like it's something that is coming back a little bit these days. I'm seeing a lot of people, even famous designers, if not trying to get inspired by gunsets, for sure recalling stitch patterns that are gunsets traditional patterns into their modern type of knitting. Does this make sense? I don't want to attach gunsets to any modern famous knitter, but I feel like more and more we have this type of stitch patterns in the latest designs that are coming out now. Anyway, I really want to make one of these for myself. It's going to be a quite interesting process. I've never done this before. I don't even know if I'm capable of. The thing that really drove me through getting this book and getting into gunsets is the fact that I had a terrible experience with knitting cables, and I had to unravel about 40 hours of work on a cable panel for a sweater. I couldn't bring myself to knit any more of that, and I promised myself not to knit a sweater on cable ever. So this way is to get some sort of cabling situation or texture in a sweater not using cables. If I am reading this correctly, this is just a combination of knit and purls, eventually some slip stitches or twisted stitches as well, and gives the texture that eventually cables would give you. Not exactly the same, of course, but something that is quite comparable. So the idea is this one. I kind of want to get a textured monochrome type of sweater jumper, but I don't want to make cables. For the life of me, is the most complicated and frustrating thing in the world. Anyway, if you have any suggestion for me on how to get used to cables, please let me know, because by the life of me, can't get my head around that. I eventually am able to make cables, but the amount of errors, unraveling, and the frustration is just bringing everything together. And yeah, that's basically it for my cable experience. Anyway, these are the two books that I got. I have a couple of books more to come on the post. God knows when they will come. I am unfortunately living in a country which doesn't have many knitting stores, and it's quite difficult to get your hands on knitting magazines rather than books. And the yarn as well. It's quite difficult to get the most popular yarns that are so easily available in Europe, in Ireland. I really hope this will change in the future, but I don't know. Anyway, this has been a really rambling episode. I have been really scrambling for my words, and this is probably due to the fact that I was in Italy for the last while and my English language got lost in the middle, and as well the fact that I came back last night at 1 in the morning after a very badly delayed flight, and I'm super tired. But I really wanted to film this video. Now I am going to edit this episode, upload it, take some pictures, and eventually go back to sleep. I'm gonna leave you to some footage from my mountains and my home. And once again, I really hope you had a lovely Easter, and I am looking forward to see you next time. Bye bye.